I was just reading a study about loneliness in relationships, and I think it's a really important thing to address because most of us get lonely in our relationships at some point, but nobody really talks about that except as a really awful thing and possibly as the death knell of the relationship, when it's actually really normal for people to sometimes feel a little bit disconnected, a little bit lonely. The study was a diary study, so people would track what they had done and how they felt and how connected they felt. And one of the things that they found was that people who felt lonely had a tendency to report arguments that their partner never reported. And at first you would think, what? That's a little bit strange. If two people are arguing, wouldn't both of them know it? But this highlights a truth about loneliness that not a lot of people understand. Feeling disconnected from other people, feeling like you're all alone, turns on anxiety. It turns on the parts of your brain that want to keep you safe by noticing problems, by being really careful, because you're in charge of your own safety. There's no one around to help you. And so those anxiety switches get flipped on in a relationship, and it feels like things are a problem or something that you need to really worry about when they might not feel that way to somebody who doesn't have those switches switched on. And so they feel comfortable and they feel open and they can kind of relax and they don't really interpret the interaction to be quite the same. And so knowing that about ourselves, we can be prepared. And if I feel myself being disconnected and feeling lonely, I can mentally switch off some of those anxiety switches so that I'm not interpreting the situation as scary when it doesn't really actually need to be that way. That prevents this negative cycle of what I'm getting scared, which means maybe I'm getting defensive or I'm getting withdrawn, which really doesn't help the relationship feel closer, either one of those. Being aware and flipping off those switches can get you out of that negative spiral and hopefully help you to just connect and be open and try to interpret things from a less anxious point of view. The second thing that those researchers found as they did the diary study and people tracked how much they interacted in physical touch and conversations and emotional connection was that the couple where somebody felt lonely or both of them felt lonely was doing the same things as the couple where nobody felt lonely. Everybody felt connected and happy. And so people often ask, what is the optimal level of fill in the blank, hugging or kissing or talking or whatever it is? And the answer is always whatever the optimal level is for you. If you can think of it as sort of like being thirsty, there's some really thirsty people in the world. They drink a lot all the time. That's what they need. There's some people who hardly drink anything. It's the same thing with connection and feeling connected. Sometimes there are people who really need a lot of connection, and sometimes there's people who a little bit of connection fills them right up and they're fine. And so what you need to know is what you need and what your partner needs and how the relationship can facilitate that. If you're an Olympic athlete and you're running and you're moving your body and you're using a lot of energy, then you're going to have different needs than somebody who's sitting around most of the time and doesn't use a lot of physical energy. And that really works. If you know that your partner works in a job or has a day-to-day life where they are giving and giving, caretaking is one of those things that just sucks your emotional energy out of you. And then they might need to be replenished in a different way than somebody who, say, has a job where they're interacting really positive with people who give back. Another thing is if you're carrying a heavy burden, so people who are in grief or people who are struggling with something like anxiety or depression, or if they're just stressed and there's a lot to do, those burdens are heavy and they take a lot out of us. And so you might need more to fill up that person's emotional connection bucket. The third thing they found is just such an important fundamental truth. They found that when somebody was being really close and connected one day, they would look at the next day and see if there was any carryover. So if you had this wonderful connecting experience, did the next day still feel really connected? And the truth that they found was it goes pretty much back to zero. Just like drinking water or being nourished in other ways, you have to be doing it consistently. You can't just drink gallons and gallons of water and have it be good for the rest of the week. that when somebody is needing to be emotionally connected and nourished, then there's a great experience and it is very nourishing, and that doesn't take away from that if the next day they need to do it again. They need to do something similar. And that's where the power of small connections really comes into play. So loneliness is normal. It's something everybody experiences. It is something that turns on our anxieties, which means that we see the world differently. Connection is something that different people have different needs for, and it's really good to get good at acknowledging your own needs and communicating things with your partner and understanding their needs. And then connection is a nourishment that we need consistently every day. It has no shelf life. They're just skills.
That's good.